Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Juliet Beauchamp and I'm here with Macworld Executive Editor Michael Simon, as well as Computerworld Executive Editor Michael Simon.
Oh,
Nope, his name's Ken Mingis.
twice. I'm
It's
sorry. You
not.
can
I'll go
say me
by
twice.
Michael. I prefer being Michael than Ken.
It's your name's Ken Mingis, the Computerworld Executive
Is that
Editor.
who I am this week? Okay.
coming
Got it.
coming off of vacation, but both Ken and me. So please forgive me, but we are talking today about the future Mac chips. So M1 chips are in some Apple devices rather right now because they're also in an iPad, but there's going to be more to come. So we're going to start off, I think maybe by talking about what the rumored M1X. So what's the deal with that? When's it coming? What could it possibly be? And is it actually even going to be called the M1X?
Michael, you want to start on that?
Yes. It's looking like the M1X is a thing. So the X variant, if you will, is something that Apple's done before. We saw it in the iPad. So Apple came out with the A12 and the iPhone. I'm going to guess and say that was the iPhone X 10s, maybe. And then or whatever it was. And then, a few months later, they would put it in an iPad Pro, and it would be the A12X. And it's a little bit faster. A couple more cores, all around better speed. The M1 is a little bit like that, just to be a little bit more technical, whereas it's based on the A14, which is in the iPhone 12, and has more cores and better graphics and things like that. So if you compare them architecturally, they're similar, except the M1 is ridiculously faster. It's faster than an A14X, which they don't make right now, and they won't, but it's faster than that chip would have been in the iPad. You don't really notice those speeds. So an A14X would have been fine for the iPad, but it's better marketing to add an M1 and it sounds cooler and all that stuff. M1X is going to be similar to that philosophy, where it's based on the M1 and it's not, super duper faster, but it's going to be a significant speed boost, graphics boost, and it'll go into the MacBook Pros that are likely, I'd say I'm 99.5% certain that we'll see those in the fall, probably October, late October. Okay. And so we'll get that, and they'll be a lot faster than a MacBook Air and the MacBook 13-inch MacBook Pro, So the 13-inch MacBook Pro, even though it does say Pro, it's not really a Pro machine. It's a higher level consumer machine. You get the touch bar, but otherwise it's basically the MacBook Air, kind of.
Hey, Michael, I'm curious because when we talk about chips and the cadence that Apple has around the MacBooks and the phones, it always seems like the chip that's in the phone that comes out in September is the upgraded one that comes out in the laptops later on. Is the assumption that whatever the chip is in the iPhone 13, assuming that's what it's called, will that be either an M1X or the functional equivalent of an M1X?
Well, not really, because that's going to be the A what are we up to, A15?
15, I think.
Yeah, so that'll be based on the A14.
Okay.
And the way I understand it is the M1X will be faster than both of those, both the A14 and the A15, and the M2 will be similar to the A15, if that makes sense.
Whenever that comes out.
Whenever that comes out, which it's looking like probably early 22 for the M2 chip.
So are we seeing? Go ahead.
No, you can ask. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to say. So are we seeing? A real branching here in terms of Apple's chip development, and I say that because, I would have thought that the iPad Pro this year, the one that got the M1, would have gotten whatever the upgraded chip was from the iPhone,
which it kind of is. I mean,
the
M1 kind of is that, like, it's just marketing.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we'll probably see going forward, the iPad will get the M1, the M2, the M3, the M4. The iPad Air will get the A15, A16, A17, and the as well as the iPad Mini when that redesign comes around. And the lower level iPad will get the previous gen, or I mean, maybe not. It depends on when it releases.
Yeah.
But and that's the way it's going to be. Apple's kind of drawing a line here, where the A series chips are for handheld casual devices, and the M series chips are for work type devices like Macs and the iPad Pro. I would be shocked if we ever see an iPhone with an M1 chip in it. It just doesn't work for me. I doubt they would do that. There's no reason for it, for one, and it muddies everything. The iPhone is a phone, it's a consumer device. I don't think that they would do that. But Apple's also is drawing a line between the M whole number, we'll say, which would be the 1, 2, and that X.
Right.
And that's what we're going to see with the next the next MacBook Pro, which will be in October.
Mm-hmm.
Likely. We think.
We've got a thought-provoking question for both of you guys over on LinkedIn.
Ooh, we have lots of thoughts.
Yeah, I know you guys do. So, and that is also a reminder to the audience. If you have any questions while we're talking, please do leave a comment. You can either leave it over on LinkedIn, on the Computerworld LinkedIn, or in the live chat on YouTube, and we're monitoring both. So this question from our LinkedIn viewer, they asked, what are the benefits of M1 chips over the Intel chips? And that's straightforward enough. But here's the philosophical question is, do you guys think that the M1 or the Apple Silicon chip family has a future in Apple or at Apple?
Well, I mean, I'll start with the first one.
It better.
So right. So the difference between the Apple Silicon M1 and the Intel processors, I mean, for one, the M1 is future proofing your device, your Mac, your iPad, because that's what Apple's going to support. With the operating system, Intel's not going away. They're not going to just drop support for it, but I don't expect it to be around in 4 years. And I think there will be versions of Mac OS and iPad OS that just don't work. Mm-hmm. Not iPad. Correct me on that one. iPad isn't going to be a problem. There'll be versions of Mac OS that just don't work on Intel machines. We saw that last time when they switched to Intel. Yeah. There was a time when Mac OS just didn't work anymore on the G series processors that they replaced. It just didn't. They just stopped supporting it, and now that'll be the same thing. And from a strictly consumer level, the M1 is way faster than the comparable machine. So a MacBook Air versus a MacBook Air. I mean, it's blow away speeds. The battery life is tremendous. And that's really what you're looking for in a chip. It's more secure. There's the ports and stuff are the same, but that's going to grow. Like there's a big future here with Apple Silicon. And the second question is absolutely central and integral to Apple's plan, all of it. I mean, they are, for the first time, Apple's controlling the whole Mac stack,
exactly,
which we haven't seen from really anybody. And the first M1s were great, but you kind of got the feeling that, okay, this is just like an appetizer. These are the ones that, there was the same design, basically the same machines with a new processor, better battery life, more speed. But you were kind of waiting like, okay, so the Apple's showing us now, this is how fast and efficient these chips can be. Next time, we're going to show you like what we can do engineering and design wise with a machine that has our own silicon inside it.
Yeah, I just want to add to that because that last point is particularly important. One of the issues that I think Apple has had with Intel is Intel's inability to move and evolve its chips as quickly as Apple wants to and as quickly as Apple thinks it can with its own silicon. And so in terms of just future innovation, Mike makes the point, and this is true. Apple's got the whole stack now. It can innovate and grow and change and roll out new features and efficiencies and whatever, as quickly as it wants to now, because it's got its finger in all the pies. And that was something that was sort of holding it back at times over the last few years as it waited, for Intel to move forward with its chips. So it's the future of Apple. I mean, Apple's future depends on it. On the Apple Silicon, and that's the way Apple likes it.
Yeah, and it's not just like there's the speed portion and the battery portion, but it's also AI stuff. And the neural engine was not, Intel didn't have that. The secure enclave is tighter. Like there's a lot that's built into this chip, the system on a chip, the M series, that they just couldn't do before. And it opens up a whole new avenue for design, because as far as the heat disposition and all the things that are inside it, everything's smaller, everything's more compact. Like that's what Apple loves to do: start from the inside and work its way out. And with the prior machines, they were kind of stymied by Intel's power requirements and heat requirements and things like that. And that's not an issue anymore.
Do we know in terms of the M1X, assuming that's the name, and I think it probably will be? I've seen reports. You guys at Macworld had something this week. I think it might have been from Roman, looking at different features that the chip would include, like 10 cores, 8 high-speed cores, 2 efficiency cores. It could address up to, I think, either 32 gigabytes of RAM or maybe
64, maybe.
Which is, that's the big surprise with the M1 is that it tops out at 16 gigs. Now that's not been an issue as far as I know.
It's frustrating, agreed, but it's also like that chip is for not, like power users, pro users, developers have not gotten an M1 Mac yet. I don't think.
Yeah.
The MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air, they're basically the same machine. The MacBook Pro has a fan, and it can run it at.
Doesn't it start off with 1 extra core? It's got 8 instead of 7.
Yeah, but you can get the MacBook Air with the same. Yeah, there is that. But even if you compare apples to apples, the MacBook Pro has a fan, which means it can run for longer sustained periods at a higher peak. I mean, okay, if you're doing that, but for the most part, unless you really, really want that touch bar, I would just say get the MacBook Air, because they're very, very similar. Same screen, same keyboard, same ports, same chip, same RAM, same storage. I mean, they're essentially identical. I almost wonder if one isn't going away. And we've heard rumors about Apple really kind of totally redesigning that MacBook Air with colors and stuff. So maybe that happens, and maybe the 13-inch MacBook Pro becomes something a little bit different. Maybe the 14-inch MacBook Pro replaces that.
I'm just going to say, don't you think
there's a lot of options.
The 13 goes. My assumption all along is eventually the 13 goes away. I mean, it's even the old design. I presume there'll be some new design with the 14 and 16.
The 14 and 16 are supposed to have
you don't need a 13 and a 14.
Yeah, you absolutely don't. Yeah. But Apple has done weird things in the past. We've had a 10.5-inch iPad and a 10.9-inch iPad. I mean, they sometimes do weird things. Yeah. So I don't know for sure that it's going away, but it does make sense that it would.
Okay. Yeah. So we have another question from one of the LinkedIn viewers, and I'm going to kind of co-opt their question to add a little bit of my own. So they asked, what advancements in technology can we expect from the M1 chip? But I kind of want to look further and differentiate between every other Apple Silicon chip that we're going to see. So like what's the advancement between that could happen from the M1 to the M2, for example?
I mean, on the surface, more speed, more RAM,
efficiency, better battery life,
things like that. But what's interesting about these chips, though, I mean, at its core, you just want every generation to be faster. Maybe support newer RAM. I mean, it already supports LPDDR4X. I mean, it's the top of the line RAM they have in there already. It's just limited to how much it can do. They already have SSD drives. Like there's not a lot architecturally or component wise that we need. I could use a couple more Thunderbolt ports, and it looks like that's coming. MacBook Pro, maybe even HDMI and an SD card slot, like the things that we haven't had for a few generations. But what's most intriguing about the chip is what it allows Apple to do design wise.
Gotcha.
Where we see rumors of many mini LED screens coming to the MacBook Pro, and we see thinner designs and more portability and things like that without sacrificing anything, because they're controlling all of this engineering now. We see it with the iPhone. I mean, you look over generations, some are small iterative updates and some are massive updates, because they can work on their own timetable here. They don't have to have their hands tied for the innovations that they want to bring to the Mac anymore. They can start from the outside, start from the inside, work their way out, and really bring the innovation, the laptop innovation that we want. We haven't had anything really like groundbreakingly innovative in a long time from Apple. Other manufacturers are doing stuff, and Apple really has kind of been in a holding pattern. So I'd like to see, wireless charging, 5G. Certainly the video camera needs help. Like there's a lot.
Isn't the 14 and the 16? I'm seeing stories now that it's actually going to get a 1080p camera.
Allegedly, it is going to get that same iMac camera. It has to. It has to at this point.
Come on, it's 2021, almost 22.
I mean, they've had that 720p camera for like a decade. It's crazy. So they there are a lot of things that they could do, and then there's things that they could do their own thing. Like we saw with the touch bar, they tried that. It didn't work. Great. It's fine. It's okay. But they can try new things because again, they're in control of that silicon.
Gotcha. So I guess any sort of remaining questions that I have about these future chips would be M1X later this year, M2 sometime next year, and then M2X
probably first half of next year. I think we're going to be on a 12 to 18 month cadence probably for these chips. I mean, let's face it, the MacBook Air doesn't need an annual upgrade. The reason why the iPhone is updated every year is because that's what we want. People swap them out and they get new ones, and that's not how it is with the Mac. Mm-hmm. People aren't looking for a new MacBook Air after they just bought one 12 months ago. So I think it'll be 18 at least, where we see, so the M2 probably like maybe WWDC-ish time, June of next year, around there. And then the M2X, another 6 to 8 months or maybe even 12 months after that. The only wild card in all this is that Mac Pro.
Yeah.
That's what I was about to ask.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah, that's a monster machine right now. And I don't know if it's an M2X or if it's its own thing entirely, because we're talking about 64, 128 cores, massive graphics. I mean, dedicated graphics too, which we haven't seen. It's all integrated right now. RAM, like a terabyte of RAM. I mean, the people who buy that machine for $6,000 need, not just one, they need that kind of power. And Apple really has to be careful about what the next Mac Pro is, because you can't abandon that group because you want to do things differently like that. Those people have completely different expectations and requirements than you or I.
Yeah, totally.
So I think that'll take a little bit longer. Maybe at the end of next year, maybe even 2023. I mean, I'm not sure what that timetable is. It's definitely not happening this year. And it's going to be, it'll probably be a WWDC thing because that's the crowd that they talk to. So maybe they'll preview it next year and launch it a year or so down the line. I mean, it took them a long time to update the Mac Pro after they kind of bungled it with the trash can. It took many years. So they're going to take their time. They need to get that right. And they did. The current Mac Pro is great for those people. I mean, it's gotten great reviews, and I mean, I don't know how it sells, but I'm sure it sells fine. Nice design, modular, all that stuff. That's what they have to bring with the M chip as well.
Do you think, Michael, the Mac Pro, would it extend beyond the 2 year? When Apple rolled out the M1 chip, they said basically they anticipated moving all the hardware over within 2 years, which would be by end of 22, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. Do you think, surely the Mac Pro would be on some sort of M architecture by then, right?
Yeah, I think so. Or at least we'll get a look at it if it's not shipping yet. Yeah, I think so. I'm also not totally convinced they won't keep supporting Intel processors and maybe even release a new version with a newer Intel processor, because there are, again, the people that use that machine, they might not be in a position to switch to Apple Silicon immediately. Apple has to be mindful of that audience. It's very small, but it's very demanding and wealthy. So they'll do what they do. Maybe there'll be like a smaller version of the Mac Pro where they keep the $6,000 one and they have like a $3,000 one. That was the old Mac Pro, was only $3,000. This thing doubled in price when they released it. So there's some options there, but that's the one that intrigues me the most as far as what that chip is going to bring, because the Mac Pro is, I mean, it blows away any other Mac that's out there right now. So we'll see what Apple does with that.
I think one of the things too, to keep in mind is we're sort of fumbling a little bit here in terms of trying to figure out what the pace of release, what the release dates are for these things because of the worldwide chip shortage.
That's a big part of it.
Apple is not immune to that. I think without the pandemic, we'd have already seen the the 14 and 16s this year.
Maybe.
And I think they're ramping up so they can release them in the fall and have at least some constrained supply. But it makes it difficult to sort of lay out, every 6 months or every, figuring out exactly when these things are going.
Totally.
For sure. I mean, they're in a better position than most. For one, they're the richest company in the world. And for two, they have production all over the place, and they can turn on a dime a lot quicker than other companies can. But yeah, they're also affected by it. I mean, we've seen it. Like the iPad has been constrained from day one. I mean, not terrible, but a few weeks because of the chip, because of the screen. So yeah, it's not something that they can ignore. But it does look like the fall release schedule will be on track. iPhone in September, Apple Watch probably in September as well. iPad, Mac in October. That's what I'm hearing. So, it's getting better. It's easing up. And, we've had a pretty quiet year so far from Apple. We got, the iMac was probably the biggest release. iPad, okay. And WWDC didn't bring any hardware at all. So there's a lot that is still waiting before 2022.
It's going to be a big finish.
Yeah, it really is.
I have one final question for you, and I guess it kind of relates to the iPad. Obviously, the M1 is in the newest iPad Pro. What kind of? I'm just wondering, is an M series chip going to be the norm for iPads going forward, do you think?
Well, the Pro, yeah.
The Pro model. Yeah.
The Pro.
I think so. The Pro will get the M2 or 3 or whenever it releases. The iPad Air, when they update that'll get the A15.
Okay.
I think. I don't think they'll make another X chip because there's, they have to distinguish between these lines more. And then the iPad Mini will get also the iPhone A15 or whatever it is chip, whatever. It looks like it's going to release this year, so that'll be the A15. And then the iPad, the entry level iPad will get probably the A14. Maybe a generation behind. However they kind of flesh that out. But I think the Pro, it's a bit more marketing than power, because like I said, the M1 is essentially an A14X. They're very similar. Mm-hmm. So, but it does sound better when you're buying it to say, hey, this has a desktop caliber chip in it.
Right.
It's a better marketing tool, I think. So yeah, definitely the Pro M series chip all the way.
Cool. We've also got at least 2 very happy M1 MacBook Pro.
Yeah, they should be. Everyone should be happy.
Users in the LinkedIn comments. And this one viewer, they said that it seems like the only disadvantage from their Intel Mac to their M1 Mac is that there's no way to reset the system management controller if there's a problem with the fan. Have either of you run into that with an M1
Mac? I have
Mac?
not.
No.
But I do know that the way to release the way to reach the reset utilities is a little bit different on the M1. So maybe it used to be you held down like Command R, I think, and now you just hold down the power button a little bit longer. So perhaps there's something in there, but I haven't ventured into that because I haven't had to. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that or the solution for that other than booting into safe mode and seeing if there's some kind of a tool within that.
Sure. Well, hopefully that helps. And if it doesn't, let us know. Well, thank you.
Let Juliet know because I can't.
Yeah. When I say us, I mean me, and I'll figure it out for you. I'll ask someone. So thank you both so much for calling in and chatting. Future Mac chips / iPad chips. So I think this is interesting. We'll see once these new chips come out, we'll obviously be talking about them, but it's a little bit down the road. So thank you both.
Thanks, Juliet.
And thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you're watching on LinkedIn, you can head over to our YouTube channel, IDG Tech Talk. You can like the video over there, and you can also subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified every single time we post a new video and also when we go live. If you have any questions or comments that we didn't get to while we were talking now and you're watching this after the fact, please do leave them in the comments below, and I will get back to you, or I'll get back to you on Ken or Mike's behalf. Thanks again for watching.